Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton. Thank you very much for watching this channel. Do please, listen, it helps, like and subscribe. Just click the like button down there, and if you've not subscribed, please do. It really helps the channel. I'm going to talk today about a man called Douglas Murray. Douglas Murray is an academic, author, and I would say that from what I've read of him, he seems to me to be the thinking man's Tommy Robinson. Seriously, he's obviously an educated individual, won a scholarship to Eton, studied there, has got a degree in English from Oxford University, and has published many what you might consider to be academic books, but on a similar subject, the subject being the Islamification of Europe, and specifically Great Britain. Now, I have looked, following one of my friend's suggestions, Michael Fair, who suggested I have a look at this guy, so I had a proper look. And I've arrived at the conclusion that he is anti-Islam, absolutely. Now, it's no good Mr. Murray saying that he isn't anti the Islamic faith, because in one specific interview he said that he was approached by a group of obviously Muslim men. Now, Muslims, Islamic, it's a religion, yeah? I mean, for all Douglas Murray knows, I could very well be a member of the Muslim faith, the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, the Anglican faith. In actual fact, I'm none of those. I'm a spiritualist. So how long would it take him to arrive at that conclusion just by looking at me? But according to Douglas Murray, he can tell the religion of an individual just by looking at them, because as he said in his interview, these were obviously Muslim men. I don't know how he knew that, because Muslims, Islamic, it's a religion. It isn't a form of dress, you know. I mean, I have people who I know who are members of the Islamic faith who work in the city of London. People who have the Islamic faith who work for the police. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, what your religion is to how you dress. I mean, there are people who take it to extremes. I mean, if you go to New York, you'll see. In fact, if you go to Manchester, certain areas of Manchester have what I believe they call Hasidic Jews. They have these long wrinkles down and hats, and they're very strictly religious, and you're not allowed to cross their path. Because when I was a child, I was raised early years in a place called Prestwich in Manchester, and our near neighbours were mainly Jewish. The guy who lived opposite had the dealership for Ford cars. This is back in the 1950s, of course. And our next door neighbour was a Jewish bank manager. There were lawyers around the corner, and their children were playing with us. An absolutely wonderful time we had. They came into our house and we played on the garden, at the big green at the front of the house. But we weren't allowed to go into their house because obviously I'm not of the Jewish faith. Although how they could tell that just by looking at me, I don't know, maybe because I haven't got a particularly large proboscis. Although that's not necessarily a sign, although it could be. But then again, perhaps that's just my inbred racism, because it is, to a certain extent, passed down from generation to generation. But as for Mr. Murray, well, Douglas Murray makes some very valid points. But then again, so it can be said for Tommy Robinson. He makes some very valid points. And then, but he says it in a manner that is rather aggressive. It's not going to win you any friends, that certainly not in Parliament. And I don't know if any of you have noticed lately, but they're starting to set up an operation, I think it's like an Ofsted thing, to deal with online broadcasts, such as this, perhaps, where people are examined by their self-appointed censors and deciding if what they're saying will stir up racial hatred. And if it will, then they're going to be taken down and prosecuted. Indeed, people have been prosecuted and put into prison. This being tales from the jails. We've got to talk about what happens when these people are radicalising the population of Britain. What happens when they get put in prison? They start to form radical groups. And that is where the prisons are becoming what they are now, to a certain extent. It's developing, it's getting gradually worse, that they're becoming universities of extremism. So look at that. Home Office, Ministry of Justice. Have a look at that. Yvette Cooper, you're the Home Secretary. Have a look at how the prisons are becoming universities of extremism. Because the prisons are disintegrating. You've introduced, perhaps inadvertently, the hostess system, which effectively means, if the hostess system is controlling members of the Islamic faith, then you're going to get no respect whatsoever, because they have a certain mindset. To the best of my understanding, this is, of course, because don't forget, I've got friends who are Iranian, and I know for a fact that they have in Tehran what's known as the morality police. They're colloquially termed, of course. They carry large batons, and if they see ladies out with their hair exposed, not covered, with the hijab, all the rest of it, they beat them with these large sticks. You can imagine that is really morally uplifting, can't you? So if they're going to do that to women, and they're going to have the whole hostess system operating as prison officers, where are we going there? No respect. When we go back to the early 70s, when I was in the prison system, didn't matter, right? Religion, race, colour, size, didn't matter. You get in your cell. And that's where they went. Well, very little dissent, because if there was any dissent, then it was a case of we've got the boys to deal with that. But they haven't anymore. That's why. The actual prisons are in chaos. And people now, listen, have you seen it? People are being released early, and they're lasting on the streets a week, 10 days, and they're being recalled for reoffending. Because one thing that the Home Office and the Ministry of Justice, and probably Yvette Cooper, does not seem to understand is that a lot of people who are in prison are career criminals. That's what they do. They don't go to work. They go out and commit crimes, burglary, theft. And therefore, what we have is an unsustainable cycle of criminality. I was talking today originally about a man called Douglas Murray, who is an obvious academic, wrote for The Spectator, etc., given lectures, probably to the Oxford Union as well. But I am sorry to say, I've come to the conclusion that he is anti-Islamic. And that won't work. I'm not a member of the Islamic faith myself, but we have to learn to live together. But it doesn't seem that Douglas Murray wants to do that. But there has to be a way. Let me read you a poem now. I'll ring the ding dong dinger. Yeah? Tales from the jails, eh? That's it, folks. I'm going to read you a poem now. This is by Philip Larkin. Philip Larkin was, in actual fact, a very brilliant poet. He was also a librarian in Hull, I believe. This is his poem about his parents and their influence upon him. It's called This Be the Verse. Let me get that out of my hair. Yeah, it's bloody poking in my head. This Be the Verse by Philip Larkin. They fuck you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had, and add some others just for you. But they were fucked up in their turn by fools in old-style hats and coats, who half the time were soppy stern, and half at one another's throats. Man hands on misery to man, it deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can, and don't have any kids yourself. This Be the Verse by Philip Larkin. Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton. Do please like and subscribe, and maybe have a look at one of my books. There's a link down there. Thank you very much.